Welcome to the Medovia Menopause Podcast, your trusted source for evidence-based, science-backed information related to menopause. Medovia is dedicated to changing the narrative about menopause by educating, raising awareness, and supporting women in this stage of life, both at home and in the workplace. Visit medovia.com to learn more. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today, we have the pleasure of having Elaine Mele on our show. Elaine has been a physical therapist for 27 years. Along the way, she has supplemented her education with certifications that include professional yoga therapist, functional nutrition for chronic pain, women's health coaching, and she's currently working towards her women's health PT. As if that's not enough, she's currently pursuing a second master's degree in social work. Elaine is a passionate guide who leads her clients on a journey through their physical, emotional, and psychological layers in a way that's accessible and empowering. By utilizing a multimodal approach that includes yoga, breathwork, meditation, and evidence-based research, clients can achieve their most optimal level of health and vitality. To keep her balance in her life, Elaine is often found traveling, engaging in nature therapy, or just curled up on the couch with her dog Izzy, a good book, and a good cup of tea. Today, we discuss the importance of physical activity during menopause, the why behind that, and what types of physical activity can be of benefit in this stage of life. Elaine shares her tips and tricks and a few aha moments that she shared with women along the way. We know you're going to love this episode as much as we did. Let's go on to the show. Welcome to the show, Elaine. We're so excited to have you here today.
Thanks, April. I'm so excited to be here and honored that you chose me to be in your inaugural season of your podcast. I'm really excited to see how this pans out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Our audience listeners may not know this, but Elaine and I had the privilege of walking through our women's health coaching certification together. So it's a pleasure to actually have you on the show and to really dig into your knowledge and expertise as it relates to physical activity and menopause, because we all know that there are a lot of changes that are happening during this menopause transition and even post-menopause. So looking beyond that menopause milestone, and physical activity is important for many, many reasons. So I'm going to start right off, Elaine, by just asking you to unpack that a little bit more and share your thoughts on that. Why is physical activity so important at this age?
Okay, so where do I begin? I could just talk about this for probably half an hour. So let's just look in general, men and women, human beings, as we age, our body systems change, they slow down, not as robust, or different hormone productions, tissue productions all start to decline as we age. And I don't like to present that as, well, we're just going to deteriorate until we die. That's not, how, we want to live, right? We want to live with vitality, but it's just a matter of doing things in a more mindful, thoughtful, smart manner. And so as we age, for women in particular, we can just kind of focus on the effects of estrogen. So I know that's an important subject matter for your audience and for myself. And so estrogen, there's some confusion. People think estrogen, they think, pregnancy, sex hormones, but estrogen does so much for the body outside of that. So estrogen is important in regulating our body temperature. That's why we get the hot flashes. It's important in maintaining our cognitive function. That's how we get the brain fog. As far as our health goes and physical activity, it helps to regulate cholesterol. It helps to maintain our bone density. And it also is important in what's called telomeres. And telomeres are an important sign of health and longevity in people, depending on how long the telomere is. So what is a telomere? It's like a little cap that's on the end of your chromosome, and it has certain like DNA. And the more we exercise and the healthier we are, these telomeres are longer. So if you can imagine, the protective function of that cap is stronger and greater. I don't want to get too deep into biology and science, but that's real. That's in recent research has been a big area of focus on like health and longevity. So estrogen functions in helping those telomeres lengthen. Estrogen also helps us reduce oxidative stress. Oxidative stress has effect on inflammation in the body. Am I talking too fast or throwing too much?
No, this is
Okay.
great information. Yeah, keep
Okay.
going.
Yep. So all those things, when estrogen starts to decline, as it naturally does, those things also get affected. So we have this whole list of things that affect our overall health and wellness just on estrogen. I mean, they don't call it the super hormone for nothing. And again, I don't want to instill fear like, oh, my estrogen's declining, so all this is going to happen. But exercise comes in to help mitigate some of those facts, because even when we're young and healthy, 20s, 30s, 40s, the effects of exercise hit all of those areas. So does that make sense? Like the exercise already as a standalone helps with cholesterol, helps with blood pressure, helps with the telomere length, helps with bone density. So as estrogen declines, our physical activity becomes more important to kind of take up that space that estrogen was, kind of managing or assisting with. So
the estrogen essentially makes up for that. The physical exercise technically makes up for that lack of estrogen, so to speak.
I mean, in general, there are a lot of
terms.
other things. Yeah. It can help support that loss.
Okay.
Because along with that loss, increased risk of osteoporosis and heart disease are, they're very high risk factors for women in menopause. So, exercise has been a standard in maintaining, those health markers, even before menopause. So it's important to continue after menopause.
Right,
So,
right. And we often
and
hear, Elaine, we get this a lot where people ask us what we do, and we explain to them that we provide education and support for women in menopause. And then we'll hear, oh, I'm already beyond that. I don't need that. And I think that that is also a common belief as we look at physical activity too, right? It's time for me to slow down. I've already hit menopause. So can you unpack that a little bit more as well? Because you mentioned physical activity before we hit menopause is important, and then during that menopause transition, but even after, right? And you talked about
yes.
bone health and cardiac health. And so I'll pass that back over to you to unpack a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah. These health markers that I mentioned do not change or even plateau with age. They just continue. You continue to be more at risk as you age because you're fighting the tide of your systems are slowing down. So not only estrogen, but just your normal aging process, that things are slowing down, and your response to healing and your metabolism, all of that is slowing down. So that doesn't change. That just continues to kind of decline. So it just depends on what what your goals are. How well do you want to live your later years? And it doesn't, I think the thing that we have to keep in mind is we don't have to keep the intensity of exercise up that we did when we were younger. It's just maintaining movement, flexibility, balance, all of those things that just help us stay healthier longer, help us recover from injury, help us prevent falls. That continues throughout our whole life.
It's interesting because you were talking about the intensity, and I know that I've heard lots of people say that if you exercise harder and more and more cardio and more, more, right, that will help. And I think that's, I think that's not true. And you talked about that. So can you tell us a little bit more about what the menopausal, postmenopausal body needs in terms of exercise right now? And what should people be thinking about in terms of their exercise plan and strategy around keeping their body whole and healthy?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kim. I'm so glad you brought it up because it is the culture that we live in is surrounded by do more. If you're slowing down, if you're getting weaker, if you're gaining weight, like just do more, do more, do more, do more. And there, there's a balance between, yes, maybe you have to make some changes in your life, but not, pushing yourself too hard doesn't benefit anybody. And particularly the research that's out there for menopause and perimenopause cautions against working too hard, because there is such a delicate balance that's happening that you working too hard can put you in a state of stress, of increased cortisol, and then increased cortisol. There's a whole nother cascade of things that happen when there's too much cortisol in the body. A lot of people kind of understand high stress, high cortisol, but what does that also do to the body is it affects the blood sugar regulation. So, possible increased risk of diabetes. And then it also, there's a phenomenon called the pregnenolone steal. And if there's too much cortisol in your body, the little bit of estrogen and progesterone that you're producing is being stolen to produce more cortisol. So what the little bit that we have is getting taken away because the cortisol needs it. And the cortisol is the priority hormone in those situations. The body doesn't care as much about estrogen. Cortisol is going to keep you alive in a gross sense. And so that's the problem, or that's the issue with working too hard. Now, if you're a marathon runner and you're, run marathons all year long and you're in your 40s and you continue to run marathon, you're probably fine. But if you're coming from, I used to walk with my friends and now I want to, train for a half marathon, you might want to, I don't want to take people's goals away from them, but it's just being more mindful and slowly progressing and monitoring, like, how is this working for your body? It doesn't work for everybody. So the harder and faster and stronger can sometimes be counterproductive. So some of the recommendations that have been made and researched is really like having more of a balanced exercise routine variety. So you want to address weight bearing, load bearing exercises. That's going to, counteract osteoporosis. That's pretty well known. But what they say is like not super heavy weights, but more high repetition, lower load. So you're still loading the body and getting the benefit of that axial compression and the weight bearing responses, but you're not overstressing the body. Personally, flexibility for me is something I recommend for people. And that could just be light stretching, because flexibility is going to keep your joints, kind of juicy and fluid, gonna help prevent that stiffness, that ache, or at least counteract it a little bit and allow you to participate in your activities as best you can. Cardio is great. Cardio is great for your heart, but again, just kind of monitoring how intense, how are you feeling after, or the couple of days after. Are you completely wiped out? Are you having headaches? Are you having like lightheadedness? That kind of stuff to, keep in mind. Balance is another really important thing as we age. Men and women our balance starts to decline because we just don't challenge it as much as we get older. So simple balance exercises, standing on one foot, doing yoga, doing Tai Chi, those are all super important. Speaking of yoga and Tai Chi, also important is to add those stress reduction type mind body exercises or activities into your repertoire, whatever your basket of things you're going to do. I think we all are familiar with what those exercises or activities do. Counteract stress and anxiety, keep us more mindful, and they also reduce that cortisol load that we could be experiencing just by having menopause alone. We could be having stress and anxiety, and so that kind of helps balance that out a little bit more. So those are the things that I recommend, like a variety of things. Moderate, not too much, but also don't limit yourself. If you can gradually progress yourself in these activities, then you can do whatever you want. It's just a matter of doing it mindfully. And just a little side note on weight gain, because I know that's a big thing for women. The balance of all this stuff is actually, like weight training and cardio both are really good for your metabolism. But a little bit of weight gain is actually beneficial in this stage. So like 5 to 8 pounds in menopause, don't stress too much about it. Actually can have a little bit of a protective quality to it because it helps to store some of that estrogen that's floating around the body. So, I think being aware of that and trying not to get too freaked out about it, and know that some of it's just normal and actually protective.
Elaine, I have
So,
never heard that before, and I'm so glad that you just shared that with our audience. To have that extra 5, 6, 7 pounds is actually could be beneficial for our bodies. We're so tied up and hung up on what the scale says, and
mm-hmm,
understanding that that can actually be beneficial and why that could be beneficial is really important. So thank you for bringing that up. And the other thing that you mentioned is the breath work and the meditation. And I think for some people, when they think about yoga and breath work and meditation, they think woo woo, and that's not
mm-hmm,
for me. So, really understanding how that breath work and that meditation can help to tap into that parasympathetic nervous system and that rest and digest, and to really calm our bodies, I think
mm-hmm,
helps some individuals understand the importance of it beyond the roots of yoga, so to speak.
mm-hmm,
Really is beneficial for the body. And we know, I think we know that physical activity is important for us. There are a lot of
mm-hmm.
things that we know that we should do, right? I know that I should not
Yeah.
have another glass of wine tonight, but I'm gonna,
Yeah.
you know, whatever it is. We don't always do what we know to be best for our bodies. Given that, what do you think are some of the greatest struggles that you see women face as it relates to physical activity in menopause and really carving out that time? What do you think
Mm-hmm.
that is? What are the barriers there?
The first thing that comes to mind is setting like your expectations too high, or setting your goals too high, or feeling like you have to, like in exercises, you have to go out and jog for half an hour or do a 6 mile hike. And if you can't do it, why bother starting? I think setting too big of a goal, or I want to lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks. Setting too big of a goal is inhibitory because, as we learned in health coaching, you kind of get paralyzed because why bother starting? Because I'll never achieve that, or I can barely walk down the block now. How am I going to run a 5K? So I think setting their expectations too high and not just starting something is a barrier. I think there's a lot of confusion. I'm so glad we're doing this podcast because, and not that I consider myself like the sole expert on exercise and menopause, but I think there's a lot of confusion out there. Social media, unresearched articles out there, and it gets very confusing. People don't know what to do.
Mhm.
Um, do I do, do I do more cardio to lose weight, or should I lift weights to lose weight, or do I diet to lose weight? And I don't want to totally focus on losing weight, but I think that gets confusing for people, and not knowing like what direction to go in.
Yeah.
I think would be a couple of things. And it's hard. Uh,
Mhm.
Exercising is hard. Pushing yourself, and some people, it's easier to have the glass of wine or sit down with the chocolate chip cookies and just say, oh, I actually need to rest and relax, which is true. You might need to do that, but it's a lot easier to reach for those things than to put on your shoes. If it's cold out, put on a coat, put on a hat, and then get out and do it. So, um,
Yeah.
and not to discount, people are very busy. So I think women especially, will prioritize everyone else, all their responsibilities, and then they come last. I think that is a huge barrier.
Mhm.
Even in our 50s, when our kids are moving out of the house and they're not actually, you know, we're not cooking and doing their laundry. Maybe we are, but when we should have more time, we're still involved in their lives, which is great. But at what cost? Like,
Mhm.
you know, also invest in your own life, as well. So I think those are a couple of the key areas.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you
It's
have some
putting that
ideas as
oxygen
well.
mask on
Yeah,
first, right?
right.
Yep.
Put the oxygen
Mm-hmm.
mask on, just start small, because it really,
Mm-hmm.
there is something to be said for celebrating those small successes, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
encouraging for us to keep going forward when that happens. And I also know that you've had a long career in PT and you've worked with a lot of women and men, but
Mm-hmm.
you've worked with a lot of women. And I'm wondering if there are any aha moments that you've had over the course of, your 20 plus years in this industry. Is there
Mm-hmm.
anything that really stands out that you would like to share with the audience?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. I think, I think what really is rewarding for me is when someone has come into me with longstanding pain, tried all these things and kind of a little despondent, like, yeah, I've done physical therapy, I've done this, I've done that, nothing's getting better. I'm just old. This is the way I'm going to live my life. And then seeing that they can actually make changes in their life at 50, 60, 70. I think people don't really give themselves enough credit for being able to make changes at those ages. And so I think those are some of the aha moments is, oh, I do have control over my healing, my health. I'm not just like at the mercy of time and age. Um, I think that is one thing. And the other thing for women, particularly, is advocacy is is becoming emboldened to ask questions to their physician, to ask for additional opinions or additional providers. Like maybe I need to see a naturopath, maybe I need to, go to therapy, whatever it may be, or maybe I need some hormone testing and to advocate for themselves because there's also, um, what's the word I'm looking for? People see a doctor and they think, I go to my primary doctor, he or she knows all. I'm supposed to
Right.
just do what they say
Right.
and not question. They have more knowledge than me. And then I leave and I'm like, well, nothing helped.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Right.
question
Right.
this person. So I think I'm a big proponent of advocacy for my patients to go in with a list of questions written down, have them answered. So I think that's another aha moment for people is, oh, I can ask these questions. I can ask for another opinion. I can ask for additional provider. I can suggest, well, I thought,
Absolutely.
yeah, this might be a good idea too.
Mhm.
So,
And we talk about that all the time. If you feel like you're not being heard or listened to and where your issues are, go find another doctor. And I
mm-hmm,
really liked what you said about self advocacy. And it made me think about something earlier where you're talking about listening to your body, pay attention.
mm-hmm,
I think in the early phases of our life, we can't, or we don't, or we skip right by
mm-hmm,
paying attention to what's going on in our body because we've got other people to take care of. And we've had several conversations where people are just like, observe, see how it's landing with you. Like,
mm-hmm,
and that's crazily a new skill,
Mhm.
really, that will help in so many different ways, in exercise for sure, but so many different ways as you're going into this time of your life where, you really have to pay attention to what's going on inside and outside your body in order to be
mm-hmm.
healthy and happy. So, thank you for reinforcing that because that's really what we feel is why we're doing what we're doing. Like, it's okay.
Yep,
It's okay to be a self advocate and it's okay to pay attention to what's going on and get what you need. Right. And I just,
And you
yeah.
have choices. And
yeah,
you have
And you have
choices. And you
choices.
have
Yep.
choices. And you have a
Mm-hmm,
right to choose. Yeah, it's your body, it's your way, and it's different for every single person. And I think
mm-hmm,
to, tie this up with a bow, coming back to something that you said at the very beginning of this episode, Elaine, is that it's about the health span and how you want, not necessarily lifespan, right? I mean, we all want to live longer. I think we
mm-hmm,
all do.
mm-hmm.
And it comes back to what do you want that to look like? And how do you want to spend that time? What do you want your body to be like? What do you want to be able to do? And to really lean into that as you think about physical activity and not so much what the scale says.
Yep. Yeah.
Which is hard,
I think
right?
it's
And it's
very
hard.
hard. Yep.
Yeah, it's
Yep. But
hard.
it's so
Hard.
important.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you would, you'd want the audience to walk away with? Did we not ask a key question or a point that of particular importance to you in the practice that you have?
I think this has been great. And I just think, just coming back to the pushing too hard, because I do end up seeing a lot of people who take up an activity later in their life that maybe they either haven't done before. Like take, for example, HIIT classes, the high intensity interval training classes are very popular. And there have been some research articles that say they're really great for women in menopause, because they provide variety, they provide a balance between the weights and the cardio, whatever. But they can also I've seen a lot of injuries because they're very fast. People, again, aren't really mindful of like what their bodies are doing. So I think just kind of, like focusing on that, or reminding oneself that, it's always a gradual process. Any new activity is always a gradual intro, and that it's a buildup. And so, because I think, but if you go into something and you get injured, it's very frustrating, and then it repeats that negative belief pattern, like, oh, I'm not meant to exercise, or I'm just too old to, whatever it is. But to just start with something that's achievable, that's easy, that feels good. That's the other thing, is like all these exercises and things that I've mentioned, if you don't like it, if it's not enjoyable, find something else.
Right.
Because the joy is what also is such a huge benefit, right? So find something that's joyful, do it with someone you enjoy spending time with. That way you get, the benefits also of that connection, that socialization, and that support from somebody else. So I think, support is a big factor in menopause in general, but when you're exercising, or just having an accountability buddy, as Jessica calls it, someone who you can be accountable for too. Yeah,
That's great.
Great points. Yeah. Yes. Well, we end every one of our episodes with a rapid fire, Elaine. So we're going to rapid fire. But before we dive into that, if anyone would like more information or would like to reach out to Elaine, you can reach her on social at myperiplan, or ElaineMele.com. So let's dive into rapid fire. Do you like sweet or savory?
Depends on my mood. Typically savory.
Okay.
Books or movies?
Books.
Yes, we talked about the books coming
to
our front door from Amazon and stacking up in our rooms. Yes. How about sneakers or sandals?
Ooh, barefoot is my number one go-to. Gosh, depends on my mood, but I would have to say like my Birks sandals, because they a lot of airflow. Sometimes strappy sandals get too confining. But my sneakers, I wear sneakers every day, so
maybe it feels good to put the Birks on, right?
Yeah.
And our last question always, and our favorite question: what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh gosh. Slow down. Slow down. I get that a lot. I'm for many reasons. Slow down. I'm pretty klutzy, and so I literally need to slow down sometimes because I injure myself.
You need to slow down.
Yeah. Drop things. And then just like, we talked earlier in the podcast, or before we got on today's, I juggle a lot of things, and I tend to be a little bit of an overachiever. So it's a balance between, yes, I want to achieve these things, they're interesting to me, but also like, I don't have to, this isn't my worth. My worth is not attached to achieving these things. So slow it down, make sure you're making, good decisions based on a thoughtful process and not just a quick response or, automatic response. So
it's a really great,
really great
piece of advice.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
And we all need to slow down. So
Yes.
thank you for that, Elaine. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the show today. Such great information. We might have to have you back because there's a lot more to unpack. But that's a wrap for today. So until we meet again, go find joy in the journey, everyone.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you so much. And thanks for having me. This was great. I'm so glad you guys are doing this. This is going to be really amazing information for everybody.
Thanks, Elaine.
Women.
Thanks, Elaine.
Great to see you.
Appreciate it. Take
Bye-bye.
care, everyone.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Medovia Menopause Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for future episodes, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. There are more than 50 million women in the U.S. who are navigating the menopause transition. The situation is compounded by the presence of stigma, shame, and secrecy surrounding menopause, posing significant challenges and disruptions in women's personal and professional spheres. Medovia is out to change the narrative. Learn more at medovia.com. That's MIDOVIA.com.